indicating that Song Qing's steps were all correct. With Su Qian's assurance, Song Qing began the final step. He snapped his fingers like Thanos and shot out electricity like the god of thunder. Su Qian spoke up, "Maintain your breathing." The whole group followed his instruction, but they held their breath instead. Then, Song Qing finally opened it and saw the successful result. The whole group cheered joyfully. The disciples clamored, asking Song Qing to teach them. But Song Qing clearly hadn't done anything different. He refined it the same way as before, yet it succeeded. He then asked Su Qian for the reason. It was not outside of Su Qian's expectations. The day Kai Wei created counterfeit silver in one go wasn't luck at all. Or rather, to be precise, it was because he was by her side, so she benefited from his lucky aura. Su Qian couldn't answer such an illogical question for Song Qing. He put on a profound and inscrutable expression and said, "You shouldn't ask me this question. As a proficient alchemist, you should learn to think about problems on your own. I think you brothers can realize where the crux of the problem lies." Hearing this, Song Qing was startled. It was clear the previous steps hadn't changed, only that final step. And so, the young man laughed loudly like a madman that I understand. I understand. He then spontaneously praised Su Qian as a true genius of alchemy. In Song Qing's heart, Su Qian's credibility had increased by 999 points. Then the young man asked excitedly, "Although you never saw our previous failures, you already knew the real reason for our failure, right?" Su Qian secretly sneered. He only knew that this guy's train of thought was gradually going off the rails. The disciples behind Song Qing eagerly awaited the answer from their senior brother's mouth. Song Qing then answered, "It's the intensity of the lightning strike." That's right. Su Qian even brought out its real name, voltage. This term was completely foreign to Song Qing. Voltage is also called electric potential or potential difference. It is the physical quantity of energy generated by different potentials in a static electric field, evaluating the unit charge. Of course, Song Qing and the others couldn't understand any of this. Su Qian quickly changed his explanation. He took a cup of water and poured it out while explaining, electricity is like water flow. It flows to a lower point. If the water in this cup is poured on someone, it's fine. But if it were a waterfall and a person stood in it, they would have their bones broken by the force of the water or even lose their life. Electricity is the same. Therefore, this phenomenon is called voltage. After hearing this, the group understood. One of them asked, "Is that what's written in that secret alchemy manual?" This was a good question, conveniently allowing Su Qian to promote himself. That's right. I have only glanced at and studied that secret alchemy manual. The content I had someone deliver to Si Tianjian is just a grain of sand in the desert. That secret alchemy manual not only records knowledge, but also contains many unknown alchemy techniques. He also decided to share the secret alchemy manual with Si Tianjian. Hearing about unknown alchemy techniques, the men drooled with excitement. After pouring honey into their ears, Su Qian revealed his true purpose. That is, it's not. Never forget, the principle of alchemy is equivalent exchange. Song Qing agreed. That's right. So, how much silver do you want? Su Qian scoffed, vulgar. How can alchemy be compared to silver? To him, money wasn't the most precious thing, but a lot of money could be considered. Scene changed to Ling Yue, who was now at the county yamen. With her pitiful, sobbing appearance, she made the bunch of simps feel sorry for such a delicate young lady. The three of them came to comfort Ling Yue, reassuring her that they would be able to save Su Qian. Ling Yue could clearly see that her big brother's relationship with his colleagues was very good. Then she heard Constable Wang say that Su Qian was a person worthy of respect. This made her feel like she was seeing another side of Su Qian. Her hands clenched tighter, wanting to hear more stories about her big brother. Constable Wang began to tell officials like us which of our subordinates are completely clean. Not taking from ordinary commoners is already considered having a good conscience. As for those wealthy merchants, we take from them freely, just as they do to make a profit. But Su Qian won't, whether it's commoners or wealthy merchants. He has never extorted wealth. Once, Constable Wang thought about the Su family's great misfortune and decided to take Su Qian to make some money. He grinned and agreed. After the matter was done, he gave Su Qian 5 silver coins. But afterwards, he secretly returned it too. The person hearing this story moved Ling Yue. Constable Wang sighed with emotion. If you say he understands that the water is too clear for fish, how could he not understand? But if you say he doesn't understand, it doesn't make sense. His relationship with everyone is very good. So when something happens to him, everyone is sad. Ling Yue's heart was now a tangled mess of 100 emotions. Since childhood, she had been instilled with the idea that all professions are inferior. Only studying is superior. Therefore, since she was young, she had respected her second brother. When he passed the provincial examination this autumn, she respected her second brother even more. Until the tax silver case, when the whole family was imprisoned. In that desperate situation, it was her big brother who opened up a path of survival for the whole family. Su Qian's recent actions moved her endlessly. Just then, her father and second brother walked in calmly. Magistrate Zhou anxiously asked about Su Qian's situation. Xinyan seriously replied that he had invited a teacher, as well as Mr. Mubai, and even a white robe from Si Tianjian. Magistrate Zhou and Uncle Su's jaws dropped, finding it hard to believe their son had such great connections. Lingwe was also very surprised, thinking her second brother had invited them through his connections. Seeing such a promising young man, Magistrate Zhou's attitude turned sycophantic as he praised, "A tiger father begets a tiger son. Your esteemed son is so intelligent. Not only has he gained the appreciation of Yunlu Academy, but he also has connections with a white robe from Tianjian. His future is truly limitless." Uncle Su, also being praised, was very proud. "That's my son." Seeing their misunderstanding, Xinyan weakly explained, "It's not wrong to say his future is limitless, but I didn't invite Mr. Mubai. It was Big Brother's connection." Even the white robe from Tianjian was invited by Big Brother himself. Now, the three of them were truly surprised. Lingwe became more and more attracted to her big brother's mysteriousness. At this moment, in Song Qing's secret chamber, the place was hung with all sorts of strange things that dazzled Su Qian's eyes. As soon as he glanced over, he was startled in shock. "What the fuck is this?" Song Qing appeared from behind with a vile smile and replied with great pride, "This is a great experiment." Its original body was a cat. Song Qing intended to fuse it with a plant to give it the ability to regenerate when severed. This guy almost succeeded. Even if its head is chopped off, it will grow back in 3 days. Its only weakness is its heart, but Song Qing failed. It completely turned into a plant. It won't move, won't think, and can only be kept in water. At this point, Song Qing looked at Su Qian as if he were omnipotent and begged him for a solution. Su Qian thought to himself, "This guy is a real demon." Seeing Su Qian's helpless expression, Song Qing became dejected again. Su Qian encouraged him, "You just went in the wrong direction." Then he started to bluff again. "I've also thought about this aspect of alchemy, but I call it hybridization technology." Song Qing perked up again, listening to Su Qian continue his nonsense. "We can start with small things like crossbreeding the same species. For example, crossbreeding 2 different breeds of cats to create a completely new breed. It might produce a completely new, better breed, or it could be the opposite. But this is also the charm of alchemy, don't you think?" Mentioning alchemy, Song Qing's spirits rose again, his eyes shining so brightly they outshone his dark circles. He had already imagined expanding alchemy not just to be limited to inanimate objects, but that living beings were also within its domain. That's why the young man had modified this cat. Needless to say, the result was that the director considered him a madman. Life is not within the domain of alchemy. Get lost in the great prison immediately. And so, Song Qing was still unconvinced. Thus, a genius and a madman are only separated by an iron door. If you're mad, you get locked up to protect the people. Su Qian even had to give a thumbs up to praise the director for doing a good job. After that, Su Qian suggested to the guy that if he wanted to refute the director without being imprisoned, he could start from the aspect of plants. Plants are also life, but their nature is much milder. I once read about a type of alchemy in a book that had a similar idea to yours. Song Qing thought of that non-existent book fabricated by Su Qian as if he were thinking of a beautiful woman. His eyes looked at Su Qian with longing. But Su Qian said no. He was luring this prey to name a price. You think you can get something for nothing? Because he had heard Su Qian's bullshit so well, Song Qing offered a price of 3 gifts. Su Qian immediately agreed. Senior Brother Song is a straightforward person. Based on Su Qian's current level of the refining realm, Song Qing chose a few suitable items for him. First is this divine crossbow. The string is made from the silk of the 6-eyed spider from the southern border and vibrant, colorful silk. It's stronger and more resilient than ordinary equipment, but the difficulty of crafting it is high, so it's not mass produced. In an ambush, it can break through the protective true chi of a martial artist in the chi refining realm, but this does not include the peak of the chi refining realm. The most valuable part of this crossbow is that it has an engraved formation. For a novice like Su Qian, he didn't understand. Song Qing had to explain. The formation will increase the arrow's damage, posing a threat to an expert in the spirit refining realm, but it can only be used 3 times before the formation disappears. From those words, the thing Su Qian was holding was a magical artifact. Uncle Su once told Su Qian that back then, the Dafeng was able to win the Battle of Shanhai Pass. The cannons made a great contribution, but half of the cannon's power came from gunpowder, and the other half came from formations. Although not patented, magical artifacts are weapons unique to the Dafeng dynasty, and also the strength that allows the Dafeng dynasty to dare call itself the orthodox ruler of the world. Thus, magical artifacts and Tianjian have a closer relationship than a K-shell electron. This is also not a secret. Song Qing cheerfully asked Su Qian what a 4th rank warlock is called. Since that guy didn't even know what the 7th rank of the martial artist system was, the answer was of course a cat nose. Song Qing gave a wry smile and answered himself, it's a formation master. So, the things alchemists create are all mundane items. A formation master carves a formation on it, and it becomes a magical artifact. That is a qualitative change. Su Qian, learning one thing and understanding half, also got it. A 9th rank warlock, the pharmacist, is building the foundation for the 8th rank chi-gazing master. The 8th rank chi-gazing master Master is building the foundation for the 7th-rank Feng Shui Master. But the 7th-rank Feng Shui Master has no connection whatsoever to the 6th-rank Alchemist. In fact, the 6th-rank Alchemist and the 4th-rank Formation Master complement each other. The Alchemist creates powerful weapons, and the Formation Master processes them into magical artifacts. The Warlock system has its own merits. That is also part of the reason why the director's status in the Defeng is so noble. Thinking of Chu Kai-wei, Su Qian was determined to win her over. The storms of a man's life, the future depends on the wife's family. He had no special purpose, just wanted to reap a little money, love, in a society colder than the North Pole. Next is the second item, called the Heart-Protecting Mirror. It is also a magical artifact. Under the blessing of a formation, it can withstand a full power blow from a martial artist expert of the Qi refining realm 6 times, for a spirit refining realm expert 3 times, and for a copper skin and iron bones, which is the 6th rank in the martial artist system, once. Any higher, and it's useless. The last one is bone corroding and heart piercing, used to apply poison to arrows. It can take the life of a spirit refining realm expert, but is ineffective against the copper skin and iron bones realm because the arrow simply cannot pierce the opponent's skin, especially the main character's thick face. It was all good stuff. Su Qian happily agreed to the deal. He seriously said that the type of alchemy is called grafting. He started to bluff again like a multi-level marketer. The theory is great, but the practice is far away. But he didn't care anyway, since he wasn't the one doing the practice. For example, if Song Qing failed, he would blame it on his weak ability. And if it succeeded, all the credit would belong to him. I don't know if the young man is dirty, but he plays very dirty. After explaining all about the theory of grafting, Song Qing felt as if his mind had been enlightened. He never expected there to be such an ancient alchemy book in the world. Today, Su Qian's harvest was not bad, so his mood was not bad. He thought he could take one of the magical artifacts to the black market to exchange for the fee to open the gate of heaven. But these things were all very useful, and he was reluctant to part with them. Indeed, not spending money is the eternal source of human happiness. That means tomorrow he'll go to the Gulen to listen to some music. The young man thought a way to get revenge on his aunt by crushing her with money, making her bow her head and not dare to mock him anymore. The more he thought about it, the happier he became, to the point that he hummed a tune as he walked. I stand here in the swirling wind, hating that I cannot shake off this endless pain. I hope the heavens let the clouds fly in all directions to see who in the world is a hero. His mood was floating on cloud 9 when he met 3 people and immediately fell tragically to the 9th level of hell. The 3 people carried a silencing effect, especially the uncle in the lead, who made him feel uncertain and suspicious as he passed by Su Qian. It wasn't until the last person passed that Su Qian regained his composure. The other person glanced at Su Qian with a half smile before leaving. Those 3 were not simple. They almost made Su Qian piss his pants. He thought to himself that next time he shouldn't sing a song with such arrogant lyrics. The young man stroked his chin and thought. The logic is sound, but as a king of living in the moment, the guy still sang like a loudspeaker. Up above, when Song Qing saw those 3 people, he respectfully clasped his hands. As for Chu Kai-wei, she still ignored the world. Her mouth was for eating, not for greeting. The person Song Qing respected so much was this stern, cold-faced uncle, the leader of the Night Watchers, named Wei Yuan. Song Qing then asked Wei Gong. The 2 following on his left and right were both golden gongs of the Night Watchers, named Nangong Qianro and Yang Yan, respectively. Wei Yuan came this time to see the director, but Song Qing tactfully said his master was drunk and invited him to wait in the tea room for a moment. Wei Yuan suddenly mentioned that he had just happened to meet Su Qian, an interesting young man. He realized that he was not a disciple of Si Tianjian. Song Qing knew that Wei Yuan was talking about Su Qian and said, he's just a minor character not worth mentioning, but he is also very interesting. It must be said that the Night Watcher organization is headed by Wei Yuan. They participate in investigations, arrests, and interrogations, while also gathering military intelligence. Their job is to lure the enemy. It does not belong to the 6 ministries nor the military system. It is the intelligence organization of the imperial family. The Night Watchers have a glorious reputation, like a tiger in the eyes of the court officials. They have the right to punish people without reason. All officials of the Defeng have heard a saying, do no shady business by day, fear no Night Watcher by night. Song Qing was very worried for Su Qian in case that guy had accidentally bumped into Wei Yuan or carelessly said something. As long as you were present, winning or losing doesn't matter then. He's done for. Wei Yuan now wanted to know how interesting Su Qian was. Song Qing paused for about 3 seconds, then concluded with one sentence. A genius of alchemy. In his eyes, if Su Qian hadn't gone down the wrong path of cultivation, if he had become a disciple at Si Tianjian, the name Su Qian would be in the history books. The 3 of them said nothing after hearing Song Qing's high praise for Su Qian. Nangong Qianro snorted in disdain. Scene changed to the Su Manor. Louis was telling her aunt about looking for Su Qian yesterday. She discovered he had no winter clothes and was still wearing autumn clothes. Her aunt asked her directly what she wanted to say. Louis wanted to make a set of winter clothes for the eldest young master, but was loudly rebuked by her aunt. Don't even think about it. The aunt held a deep grudge against Su Qian. That brat provokes me every chance he gets, and you want me to make clothes for him? In his dreams. He comes to eat at home every day, but doesn't contribute a bit to the household expenses. Although Su Qian gave all his salary to the manor with his appetite, it was like a drop in the ocean. The aunt actually wanted to ease the relationship because her nephew had saved the whole family, but every chance he got, the nephew would poke at her, which was very bitter. You guys have, wolves travel 1,000 miles to eat meat. Dogs travel 10,000 miles to eat dung. The proverb is not wrong at all. The maids were also silenced by the aunt's harsh attitude. Suddenly, the butler ran in, panicked, and announced that something had happened. After hearing the news, the worried aunt ran to see. Ling Yin, the little girl, was in Uncle Su's arms, luckily unharmed, just sleeping. Uncle Su calmed his wife down and handed the child to her. The aunt choked up and asked how things had become like this after just one trip outside. She had just been cursing Su Qian, but now that she knew what happened, she was worried about him. Uncle Su comforted his wife. It's okay. He's already out of the Ministry of Justice. This matter can be considered resolved for now. This time, if it weren't for Su Qian, both Ling Yue and Ling Yin would have been in danger. Su Qian's personality is a bit stubborn, but he treats people. The house is not bad. Uncle Su said emotionally to his wife, "When an ordinary person risk their life for our daughter like that, you always say you don't like the sight of him, that you see him learning martial arts and getting a lot of silver. You feel that since you raised him, saying a few words is no big deal. You also find the way he talks disagreeable and always oppose him." This time, acting very much like the man of the house, he raised his voice and continued, "But have you ever thought about whether it was really that easy for him, living off us for 20 years? Isn't he sensitive deep down? When Ling Yue was bullied, he could rush forward and risk his life for her." Ling Yue was also moved by her father, thinking that in this life, she must repay her big brother well. Uncle Su continued to ask his wife, in her heart, if Qian really couldn't come back, would you truly not feel heartbroken? Hearing this, Auntie's eyes welled up with tears, her heart shaken. Seeing his mother's expression, Xin Yin could tell that although his mother always called Big Brother a gold-swallowing beast and a jinx, she actually still cared about him. She was sharp-tongued but soft-hearted. After all, she had raised Qian for 20 years. There had to be some affection. Just as he was feeling moved, Uncle Su looked straight at his son and said something that made him feel cold. If it were her son there this time, I'm afraid he would have been bullied along with him. Xin Yin's expression was dazed, wondering if this was really his father. Little Ling Yin had been put to bed by Annie. The child, talking in her sleep, still didn't forget about food. Chicken legs, so many chicken legs. Auntie then told Lu Yi to take out the old man's and second son's winter clothes, setting aside one set of each. When first son returns, they would measure him for size. Lu Yi was surprised that her madam had changed her mind. She asked cheerfully, not knowing she had hit Auntie's sore spot. She was so damn furious. "In your eyes, am I that kind of harsh, Aunt?" The girl was so scared, she covered her head. It was obviously true. Today, Qian began to grind ink again. That's right, he was about to start writing in his journal again. November 16th was a memorable day for him, because he finally decided to give up and switch his life's difficulty from easy to hell mode. What he pursued now and in the future was power and force, so he had 3 thoughts. One was to change his cultivation path to the Confucian way. As long as he could please the 2 great scholars, they would do their utmost to help him. It was much better than struggling on the path of a martial artist himself. Other transmigrators use poetry to show off, but this fellow Qian uses it for transactions. Well, he could only console himself that his lucky constitution was different from ordinary people. But the drawback was endless studying, which brought back the fear of being dominated by his high school life, studying until he became nearsighted. Moreover, he was already over 20 years old, so it was a bit late to change his cultivation path. 2 was to work diligently to make up for his shortcomings, meaning to diligently plow on the bed, to try his best to seduce Miss Kai Wei of the Imperial Astronomy Bureau and live a lifetime as a kept man with the support of the director. Even if he didn't try hard, he could live a full life. But the fatal flaw was that he would have to say goodbye to having 3 wives and 4 concubines, goodbye to the satisfying life of listening to music at the Gulen. This sacrifice was too great. Who could understand this pain? 3 was to sell a magical artifact he got from the Imperial Astronomy Bureau in exchange for a chance to open the gate of heaven. The drawback was that even at the Qi refining realm, he would be no match for the Vice Minister of Revenue. Moreover, without support later on, it would be very difficult to continue bravely on the path of martial arts. Uncle Su being stuck at the peak of the Qi refining realm was the best example. So, Qian decided to just cling to the Imperial Astronomy Bureau and Yunlu Academy for now and see what happens. He had a feeling that the storm of the tax silver case would not end like this, like an undercurrent that couldn't be seen but could cause great waves at any moment. Then, as soon as Qian went out, he saw his little sister Ling Yin. waving her arms and legs, performing a few punches. Qian's eyes itched watching her, and he kicked his sister, who was acting like a lunatic. The little sister, who was practicing martial arts, was sneak attacked and screamed, then accused, "Are you provoking me, big brother?" Hearing she was practicing martial arts, Qian was speechless. It was the morning's events that had left a shadow in Ling Yin's heart, making the 5-year-old child feel that she should learn martial arts. Knowing this, Qian played the villain and even provoked her. Yeah, that's right. Ling Yin had half learned from her father that so-called people fight for a breath of air, and so do martial artists. This is called what kind of dignity, or Sun Wukong. Qian prompted her its dig. 90. That's right, I must duel with you. Little Ling Yin threw a punch, so Qian showed paper. The little girl still screamed her head off. Qian was annoyed and secretly scorned her. So damn predictable. He then tempted her, "I'll give you a chicken leg, and we'll say you lost." Hearing about food, Ling Yin's eyes were blinded by the chicken leg. Her eyes, as obedient as a puppy, she replied sweetly, "Okay." Taking the opportunity, Qian teased her. "Where's your dignity?" "My dignity is being carried away by a dog." The little girl, ever so innocent, asked back, "Big brother, what is dignity?" Qian was at a loss for words with this little glutton. She really has a future. At night, the 3 men of the house gathered around a tea table to discuss what happened that afternoon. Uncle Su, still as clueless as ever, thought the matter was over and there was no need to worry. Xin Yin was smarter, thinking that the guy named Zhou might still seek revenge. Uncle Su still insisted it was impossible. Normally, it would be one thing, but today a great scholar from Yunlu Academy and a white robe member of the Imperial Astronomy Bureau had shown up. He thought that fellow Zhou wouldn't dare to stir up any more trouble, but like hell he wouldn't. Qian told the two of them a shocking piece of news he got from the Imperial Astronomy Bureau. The mastermind behind the tax silver case was Vice Minister Zhou. They were all shocked. Thus, Xin Yin connected it to today's events, realizing it was no coincidence, but that Zhou Li had deliberately sought revenge. Qian had to secretly praise him. "Good job, little brother." As expected of a scholar who could pass the provincial exam, his mind was sharp. If only Uncle Su had been there today, he would have only gotten beaten up. Qian then tested his younger brother to see what his opinion was. Xin Yin made a chopping motion, meaning to strike first to gain the upper hand. If you're gonna play for blood. Qian had a new perception of his younger brother, not expecting him to say such decisive and ruthless words. Truly, a gentle interface with a battle-hardened operating system. But Uncle Su thought his son was talking nonsense and immediately criticized him. "Even if you become the top scholar, you can't mess with the Vice Minister of Revenue, you fool." Xin Yin, who was drinking tea, choked. Qian, on the contrary, agreed with his brother's thinking. They hadn't offended Zhou Li, but the Vice Minister of Revenue, Zhou Xianping. Perhaps Zhou Li wouldn't dare to retaliate, but the Vice Minister of Revenue was different. Qian and his group had not only ruined his plan, but also injured his legitimate son. This debt, wherever there's smoke, there will be fire. There was absolutely no way it would just settle down. Besides, in Vice Minister Zhou's eyes, their Su family was no different from ants. Knowing this, Uncle Su still had no confidence in fighting against their family. He wanted to rely on his nephew's connection with the Imperial Astronomy Bureau and his son's connection with Yunlu Academy to live in peace. The two of them then gave the old man a wake-up call. The white-robed member of the Imperial Astronomy Bureau doesn't meddle in court affairs. When solving the tax silver case, even though Xin Yin was a student of Yunlu Academy, he still couldn't be saved, right? And as for today's matter, Qian was able to return safely because Zhou Li had no justification, as his methods were too crude. But if Vice Minister Zhou were to make a move, with another case like the tax silver one, he could legally and legitimately have the entire Su family beheaded. The Imperial Astronomy Bureau and Yunlu Academy wouldn't break into a prison and defy the law for them. Only now did Uncle Su feel like a drunk man sobering up. His brain was now more tangled than his own tangled hair that hadn't been washed in a billion years. Their opponent was the Vice Minister of Revenue, a third-rank official. How could they deal with him? Qian didn't know how either, as he was just a simple transmigrator who had been given the cold shoulder by God. So, they both had to rely entirely on the younger brother. He was still deep in thought, and then voiced his ideas. The tax silver was stolen, and the emperor was furious, obviously valuing the silver greatly. So logically, the culprits should be severely punished. Uncle Su chimed in from the side. So didn't those two bastards commit suicide out of fear of their crimes? Qian was so annoyed, he just wanted to muzzle the old man right away. Xin Yin was helpless. What he meant was he was thinking of two possibilities. One is that the Vice Minister of Revenue has a backer. Two is that the emperor has other concerns, for example, wanting to maintain some kind of delicate balance. Qian once said that a censor from the Ministry of Revenue had impeached Vice Minister Zhou for embezzling funds from the National Treasury. So why didn't he impeach another vice minister, or impeach the Minister of Revenue, for instance? Qian answered the question with a serious expression. Could it be that Vice Minister Zhou's political enemy is him? From ancient times, the core of imperial art has always been balance. The fact that the emperor didn't touch Vice Minister Zhou makes this clear. This is very likely related to factional struggles. If under normal circumstances, the art of imperial rule might be effective. But now, with the capital inspection approaching, only by getting a handle on Vice Minister Zhou's tail is there a great possibility of making him log out. The capital inspection is established by ancestral rule. Even the emperor cannot insist on doing as he pleases. Therefore, Vice Minister Zhou's political enemies will not let this go. Qian's every sentence was a bombshell. The core of the Confucian dragon-slaying art is the two words, rights and regulations. Xianyan never expected his big brother to be able to say something so politically charged. Was this still his crude big brother? In reality, Qian had just watched over 180 minutes of historical dramas, so his words got out of control. Xianyan, of course, was not convinced and was determined to compete with his big brother, so he asked what he thought. Qian was exasperated with this tsundere who was fierce on the inside but hot on the outside. If she were the female lead, he would find it extremely annoying, but if she were a 36D fruit-selling older sister type, it would be fine. Getting back to the main topic, Qian replied, "Why did Vice Minister Zhou create the tax silver case? It definitely wasn't for embezzlement, because he could embezzle any time. Why do it in the eye of the storm, right before the capital inspection? If his brain isn't stupid, it must be paralyzed. Unless he urgently needed a sum of money, needed that money to fill a deficit. And the reason for filling this deficit is precisely to deal with the capital inspection. So what Qian and his group need to do is find the real reason why Vice Minister Zhou embezzled the silver and create a situation where he has nowhere to hide, to teach him a lesson in propriety." But before Qian could finish his words, he saw his younger brother had already turned into a demon, which made Qian shut up. Uncle Su, on the other hand, was boisterous. "My wisdom speaks loudly. I get it now. So we have to expose this matter and leave that guy named Zhou with nowhere to hide." He shared the same thought as his nephew. After speaking, he even proudly and smugly said, "I, Su Pingji, am not stupid either. Stupid as hell is more like it." Xianyan immediately threw a bucket of cold water on him. "Father, do you think that with your status as a centurion of the Imperial Sword Guard, you can touch the Ministry of Revenue's files? Can you investigate the Vice Minister of Revenue?" Qian also chimed in with his brother. "Of course not." Uncle Su was slapped in the face a second time. Qian silently thanked Uncle Su for taking the hit for him. Xianyan then asked for his big brother's opinion. Qian then put on a very dangerous look and replied, "Drive the tiger to swallow the wolf. We won't deal with Vice Minister Zhou's main force. What we have to do is be the last straw that breaks the camel's back." As for how to do it, he hadn't thought of it yet. He was just saying it to sound impressive. Xianyan, however, strongly agreed with Qian's words. Taking a step back, we don't need to deal with Vice Minister Zhou. A high-ranking third-rank official has plenty of schemes and methods. He's not a boss that novices like them can handle right now. But as a person, he naturally has weaknesses. Qian sobered up completely. It's that guy Zhou. Compared to Vice Minister Zhou, that fellow Zhou is much easier to deal with. If there isn't enough evidence to convict him, then we will create an opportunity. First, give Zhou Xianping's political enemies the evidence to let them kill Zhou Xianping for us. This is borrowing a knife to kill someone. Next, if the Vice Minister's son does something else that infuriates people, as the father, Zhou Xianping will find it hard to deny his guilt. It's the old father getting dragged down by his son. The more Xianyan spoke, the more enthusiastic he became. The emperor was willing to protect him once, but he might not be willing to protect him a second time. After hearing this, Uncle Su excitedly slammed the table. "That's my son. He has the makings of a leader." Qian was annoyed. "Doesn't your nephew have the makings of a leader?" Huh. At this point, Qian added a sentence. "Second son. That's why there's a saying that scholars' empty talk harms the nation, but it's also hard to escape the old mold." Xianyan's annoyance was visible as he retorted sarcastically. "Then please enlighten me, big brother." Qian put down his teacup and said that what they needed to think about was not plotting against Zhou Li, but rather observing Zhou Li gathering information, then compiling it, boldly creating a plan, and then carefully and meticulously considering the process to judge the plan's feasibility. Xianyan has the scholarly honor of a Jiren and can access the intellectual circles to find out information about officialdom from there. Qian then assigned the task of gathering information on Zhou Li to Xianyan. As for Uncle Su, being an Imperial Sword Guard on night patrol, he would be responsible for monitoring the movements of the Zhou residents. He didn't need to go himself. He could send a reliable confidant to follow him, see where that guy Zhou Li goes in a day, what he does, and who he meets. This time, Qian displayed his resourcefulness and cunning, which increased his credibility in Uncle Su's eyes. He immediately said okay. Then, they both looked at Qian, wondering what he would do. Qian replied that he needed to plan an escape route for the Su residents. After that, Qian asked Xianyan to stay behind to discuss more details and ask a few things. So that night, the two of them shared a bed. Xianyan asked if Big Brother had taken a nap, and the young man said yes. Oh, Big Brother took a nap again. Yes. Suddenly, the younger brother stammered. You're poking me. The young man Qian felt a pang of guilt, thinking it was his sword. Luckily, it turned out to be his elbow. He quickly pulled his arm back before his brother could draw his sword and slash him. After that, the atmosphere was no longer awkward. Qian then asked, "How long has it been since we slept in the same room?" Xinyan replied that it had been a very long time since Qian started spending 100 taels a year on his studies. After the tension with Andy, the brothers also gradually grew distant. This answer was unexpected for Qian. He thought his brother would be resentful. Then he felt a sense of regret. Now, the two brothers could sleep together, but Sister Lingyue was a distant shore he could never reach. At night, the two young men couldn't sleep and stayed up together. Qian expressed that he actually didn't blame Andy. He understood that the job of an imperial sword guard didn't bring in any lucrative extras. Second, Uncle had to work his fingers to the bone, selling himself to the feudal capitalists. Combined with his salary, he only made a little over 200 taels a year, and half of that was given to Qian, with the other half for everyone else's expenses. So, it was understandable that Auntie felt resentful in her heart. He added that the Su family was facing a crisis this time. If they couldn't get through it, the Su family would be finished. If Vice Minister Zhou didn't fall, that would be when disaster would strike the Su residents. Qian had already prepared an escape route. At worst, the whole family would leave the capital after the capital inspection. He and second uncle had good skills and could survive anywhere. It was only Xinyan that he felt sorry for. After 10 years of hard study, he had finally passed the provincial exam, only for it to be blown away by the wind and buried in the sand. In contrast, Xinyan appeared calm, saying that to him, fame and fortune were like fleeting clouds. As a scholar who read the books of sages and cultivated the path of sages, how could he only care about fame and fortune? Qian was also moved and thought to himself, heaven did not give birth to me, Su Xinyan, so the Great Fang's eternal ages are like a long night. He was so moved he caught a cold and took his brother's blanket. And so, the two young men, sharing a blanket on a cold night, became soulmates. The next morning, the sun rose. Lingyue woke up, opened the window, and almost opened the windows to her soul. Suddenly, Lingyue panicked. The young man Qian walked by with a calm face and even casually said hi. Lingyue screamed and quickly shut the window. Who knew that the young man Qian was moved by Lingyue's assets? His little sister had really grown up. Although he hadn't raised her single-handedly, he had watched her grow up. But her clothes were still on properly. Why such a strong reaction? At this moment, Lingyue was utterly flustered. She didn't expect Qian to come this way because her parents' main house wasn't here. A maid on the side had to remind her young miss that she had to change this habit, to wash her face completely before opening the window. It was lucky it was her own brother. If an outsider saw, how could she live? Lingyue was already embarrassed, and being teased made her face turn as red as a GAC fruit. She thought to herself, big brother saw everything. Qian felt so wronged. At this time, in Ling Yin's room, as the little girl was brushing her teeth and washing her face, a shadow flashed by. Qian looked at his little sister as if she were a strange creature. Since when had his little sister become so diligent and self-disciplined? It turned out that the little girl had heard from her father that a man must rely on his own efforts to practice martial arts. Qian narrowed his eyes and asked, "Do you know your girl?" Ling Yin replied, "I know," but her clueless face clearly showed she didn't. Qian continued to pick on his little sister. "Do you know the difference between a boy and a girl?" The question related to biology, and even a long-winded explanation might not cover it all. And even if Ling Yin heard it, she might not understand. So he thought of this simple way to put it. Boys grow up to have a bean, girls grow up to have an egg. Ling Yin seemed to have an epiphany and said, "No wonder Mom always says I'm a troublemaking demon." And so the little girl ran around shouting that she was a troublemaking demon. Qian had messed up. He felt that he shouldn't eat at home today. So he ran out to eat. When he asked to pay the bill, the owner was very polite and replied, "Officer, you are too kind. For you to come to my place to eat is my good fortune." Qian pointed to the pile of huge bowls and asked again, "Are you sure I don't need to?" That amount of food was enough for 4 to 5 people, but the owner still didn't dare to accept payment. Qian had no choice but to tell him to leave. After the owner left, his face was gloomy because today was basically a day of working for free. Seeing this, Qian could only blame the long-standing corrupt system in the Great Phone. As long as the officials are not cured of their corruption, the lives of the common people will not improve. From ancient to modern times, the ones who harm the people the most have always been the flies with prestige and their noses in the air. After Qian left, the owner was relieved as if he had gotten rid of a burden. It was only when he was clearing the dishes that he was stunned. He quickly ran in the direction Qian had left, but the person was already gone. Then he looked at the coins in his hand. This was the first time he had met an official who paid for his meal, and paid so much at that. After returning home, Qian immediately put on his younger brother's clothes. His appearance instantly upgraded. Seeing this, his younger brother was so annoyed, he just wanted his brother to get lost quickly. The destination for the two brothers on this trip was Qingyun Mountain, located 60 miles from the capital. In the mountain, there was an academy, the world-famous Yunlu Academy. On the way, Qian voiced his curiosity to Xinyan. "You said the sage is first rank?" Xinyan, still with an arrogant face, replied, "Do you think I would know?" Seeing his brother's punchable face, Qian was dissatisfied. Already stupid, but still acting professional profound. Huh? Then he asked how long the sage had lived. Surprisingly, Xinyan answered with a number 82. This time, it really surprised Qian. The great sage, the founder of the Confucian path. Even if he wasn't first rank, his life shouldn't have been so bad, yet he only lived to be 82. Although this was considered a normal lifespan for people of this era, the martial power of this world was not trivial. He couldn't understand why even a sage couldn't live to be 100 years old. Xinyan continued to tell his big brother that the rule of Yunlu Academy was not to accommodate outsiders. Even he couldn't get the teachers to agree. He really didn't know if his big brother was confident of success. Qian replied indifferently, "It's up to man to make things happen." At this moment, on Qinyan Mountain, there was the sound of an argument. It was two old men playing Go. One old man made a wrong move and wanted to take it back, but was not allowed. So he used the sage's words to justify himself. To know your mistakes and correct them, there is nothing better. Did the sage mean it this way? Zhang Shun was pointing at the old man opposite him and scolding. "This old scoundrel wants to debate the Tao with me? Fine. Today, only one of us can leave alive." The old man opposite, named Chen Tai, was no less fierce. This old man didn't grow up eating vegetarian food either. He was one of the 4 great Confucian scholars of Yunlu Academy. He has the talent to govern the state. His book, Strategies for Governing the State, was very popular in the official circles of the Great Phone. Li Mu Bai, who had been listening for a while, couldn't stand these 2 weirdos who were terrible at Go any longer, and asked, "Where's the headmaster?" "He has gone to receive the eldest princess." Suddenly, Chun Tai sighed wearily. "In 3 months, it will be the spring examination, and the students of the academy are so damn lazy. Last night, I took a stroll through the dormitories, and there were hardly any lights on for late-night study. They probably turned them off to practice self-cultivation. Even a few lights that were on were just to illuminate Go boards." Thinking of this, the old man's anger increased exponentially, and he cursed, truly a thing that makes one lose their mind. Zhang Shun was made to spit blood by this shameless old scoundrel. When you lose, you blame it on obsession. When you win, you show off your might. Zhang Shun then lumped this fellow and Li Mu Bai together in terms of playing dirty. One was half a pound, the other was 800 grams. Li Mu Bai was like, "What does this have to do with me?" The official career path for students of Yunlu Academy was fraught with difficulties. Even if they passed the provincial and metropolitan exams, it was hard to rise quickly in the officialdom. They were often sent to remote mountain areas to be officials, or thrown to places where dogs wouldn't bark and chickens wouldn't poop. This severely dampened the enthusiasm of the students in the academy for taking the exams. Zhang Shun felt that this could not go on forever. They had to stir up the students' exam-taking spirit. Even if it was hard, they had to hold on. The official career path of Yunlu Academy could not be cut off here. Li Mu Bai suggested holding a study encouragement meeting with the headmaster present. But every year, the headmaster would be enthusiastic for a few days and then deflate. They needed a new way to make the students diligently and voluntarily take the spring examination seriously. Chen Tai then proposed writing essays, but was immediately shot down by Li Mu Bai. The only thing left was poetry, because since ancient times, poetry has moved people's hearts. Composing a deafening and eye-watering poem would be much more effective than an encouragement meeting. But in the Confucian circles of the Great Phone, poetry had long been in decline. Zhang Shun felt regretful. If Yang Gong hadn't gone to take up his post in Yangzhou, this black pot would have been passed to him, because in this group of troublemakers, he was the one most proficient in this genre. Chen Tai seized the opportunity to mock Zhang Shun again, just as a battle rap was about to break out. A student ran in to report that Su Xinyan had arrived. Zhang Shun didn't know why his disciple had come, wondering if he had finished copying the sage's words 300 times. He let his disciple in. While waiting, the 2 old men, Li Mu Bai and Zhang Shun, showed off the new disciples they had just accepted, who had a talent for writing world-shaking poetry. After hearing this, Chen Tai burst out laughing and scorned the 2 old men for being blinded by fame and fortune, and also for being jealous. Although Yang Gong's reputation was passed down through generations because of that one poem, good lines are hard to come by. A scholar might only produce a few in their entire life. A good poem, let alone one that could be recorded in the annals of history. He thought that squeezing out a single line, "Don't worry about having no friends on the road ahead, for who in the world does not know you," was already transcended. To expect him to squeeze out another whole poem was impossible to know. It has to be 2 poems. The 2 old men were now hugging each other affectionately. Chun Tai continued to lecture these 2 fellows. If you pay too much attention to fame and fortune, how can the surging righteous chi in your hearts continue to exist? A good line that is passed down through the ages is not something you can just casually produce, let alone from someone who isn't even a scholar, but a bailiff with 2 names on his blacklist. Therefore, in Chen Tai's eyes, the act of relying on a clerk to produce a good poem so they could be immortalized in history was truly a delusion of grandeur. After the verbal lashing, the two old men sobered up and obediently admitted their mistake. Chen Tai was very satisfied with the attitude of the two old fellows and even paraphrased the sage's words. To know your mistakes and correct them, there is nothing better. After that, the two brothers, Qian and Xinyan, were let in. Both politely greeted the old teacher. Li Mubai was eagerly anticipating that Qian's visit this time would bring him a good poem. Qian suddenly said seriously, "Student has come here to ask for a favor." He decided to act first. He would bring the female relatives of his household to Yunlu Academy, so that even if they were truly retaliated against by the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue, Yunlu Academy could shelter the women of the Sioux residents. Of course, Qian concealed the matter of retaliating against the Vice Minister. He only said that the person behind the tax silver case might be Vice Minister Zhou, and if the other party survived the capital inspection, he would definitely take revenge on the Sioux residents. After learning of Qian's plan, the two old men were in a difficult position. Their rules forbade outsiders from lodging there, and scholars were the ones who talked most about rules. Xinyan said with a dissatisfied attitude, "Doesn't the eldest princess also often stay at the academy?" Zhang Shun replied with a deadpan expression, "What kind of status does the eldest princess have?" "Oh, is that so?" Xinyan said sarcastically, "The academy forbids outsiders from staying, unless they are imperial relatives." The three old men were left speechless. Li Mubai and Zhang Shun thought about the future of that fellow. If he reached the life-bestowing realm, with that foul mouth of his, he would be insufferably arrogant. Suddenly, Chen Tai struck up a conversation with Qian. Having just heard about his poetic talent from the tabloids, he came up with a solution. "If you can compose a poem right here that satisfies all three of us, I will take charge and let the female relatives of the Sioux residents stay in the academy, and I will also ensure their complete protection." Isn't this just squeezing the protagonist dry for free? Qian was tempted. He asked if the poem was a free choice or had a fixed theme. The three old men looked at each other and gave a common answer: encouraging learning. Qian knew right away he couldn't write freely. Otherwise, with his ability to plagiarize poems, he could produce a timeless masterpiece right then and there. He then thought about the field related to encouraging learning. In terms of sheer audacity, he immediately thought of Shu Zhong Ziyu Huang Jin Wu, Shu Zhong Ziyu Yin Ruu, meaning in books, there is naturally glory and wealth. In books, there are naturally beauties like jade. But he quickly dismissed it because this poem was written by a Song Dynasty emperor. It was mixed with the tempting flavor of official fame, whereas the official path for graduates of Yunlu Academy had always been arduous. When Xinyan passed the provincial examination, he had once ranted, "I wonder if I'll be thrown into some deep mountain or remote valley in the future." If Qian copied this poem, it would be no different from stabbing Yunlu Academy in the heart and would have the complete opposite effect. Seeing Qian remain silent, everyone grew anxious. A moment later, Qian confidently accepted the challenge. He then told his younger brother to grind the ink. Xinyan immediately offered. Here. Qian, with his tattered calligraphy skills that would only bring shame, just said, "No, no, no, you write for me." At this moment, Qian's voice rang out. At the third watch, the lamps are lit. At the fifth watch, the rooster crows. It is precisely when a young man should be reading. With black hair, one knows not to study diligently early on. With white hair, one will regret reading late. These few lines made the whole group praise it as excellent, as expected of my student. Chen Tai was also stunned by the poem's simple words but profound meaning. Thinking about the poem's content, Chen Tai couldn't help but recall his teaching days at the Young Lake Academy. Zhang Shun was endlessly emotional about his passionate youth. 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river, never looked down on a poor youth. Normally, we had nothing to eat, and at night our stomachs would rumble with hunger, but we had to endure and study hard by lamplight. Li Mubai immediately showed a grumpy attitude because back then, that old guy used to steal his chicken's eggs. Zhang Shun was still being stubborn. "How can you call what a scholar does stealing? Didn't I pay you back later? Pay back my ass. A chicken egg when we were poor was like 1,000 taels of gold today." Chen Tai looked at the two old men, too tired to even bother. He turned to Xinyan and asked if he had considered his future after the spring examination. Although Chen Tai was not an official, he had some influence in the Great Feng officialdom and could help Qian and the others make plans. Without being asked, Chen Tai spoke up. "No need for thanks. If you really want to repay me, this old man has a way." All four of them simultaneously cast judgmental glances at this old man. "Who said they wanted to repay you?" Li Mubai also shamelessly tried to recruit Qian into his tutelage. At this time, Qian consulted the three of them about a problem. He had been stuck in the essence refining realm for a long time. From the beginning, he had no resources or opportunity to enter the Qi refining realm, so he wanted to ask the teachers to help him open his heavenly gate. Zhang Shun replied helplessly, "I follow the path of a poor scholar. How can I help you open your heavenly gate? How to circulate Qi and blood in the body, how to clear the meridians. These are all things that only martial martial artists know. Qian didn't expect the gap between the systems to be so large. He then came up with a question: if opening the heavenly gate requires the help of a spirit-refining realm master, how did the first person open their heavenly gate? Li Mubai answered this confusing question for him. Do you think the path of martial arts was created all at once? It had to go through the exploration of many generations. Perhaps in the beginning, the essence-refining realm was the peak. Then, someone, by a stroke of luck, opened the heavenly gate. Thus, the essence-refining realm was no longer the peak of martial arts. Year after year, a complete martial arts system was formed. Having a spirit-refining realm master help open the heavenly gate is the safest and fastest way, but not the only one. At birth, a child has a certain amount of innate true qi. As they age, the heavenly gate closes. The innate true qi is hidden in the body. To control this flow of qi again, one must reopen the closed heavenly gate. There are many ways. Besides the familiar method of having it opened, there are two other ways. The first is the breathing method. The breathing method requires cultivation from childhood, daily immersion in medicinal baths to cleanse the meridians and open the heavenly gate. It takes 20 years and countless money, so this method has been discarded. The second is to borrow external force to open the heavenly gate, which is the foolish method used by the pioneers in the early days, such as swallowing a demon core. A demon core is the condensed essence of a demon clan's cultivation, containing immense energy. After swallowing a demon core, that energy will forcibly clear the meridians. But because it cannot be controlled, this is a method of 9 deaths and 1 life. Qian finally understood. Although he didn't gain any practical skills, his brain gained a few more wrinkles. He sincerely thanked the 3 teachers. Being thanked by such a humble, honest, and brave student, the 3 old men felt as if they were bathing in a spring breeze. Afterward, that poem was hung on a board, shining so brightly it dazzled the eyes. The slacking students were shamed by the poem's content for their years of cutting class. They were awakened by the poem's spirit of learning, and the whole group was eager to know who wrote such a soul-stirring poem. The old men watched the crowd's reaction and were extremely happy. They all say poetry is useless, but they don't know that poetry is what moves people's hearts the most. With just a few sentences, the old men were again praising Qian as a truly peerless poetic talent. He composed it in just 10 minutes. With this level of skill, forget about the present. Even looking back through history, he would be ranked among the top. The old men felt even more regret that this incredibly talented Qian was already too old to switch to cultivating the Confucian path. Such talent learning martial arts was truly a waste of heaven's gifts. Zhang Shun then remembered it was all because of that fellow Su Pingji, who had decided his son would study literature and his nephew would study martial arts. And so, the 3 of them were so pissed, they had to curse Su Pingji for being inhuman, for wasting a talent. It was truly damnable and hateful. Somewhere, Uncle Su, being talked about, sneezed a few times. At this time, the students were gossiping about that poem encouraging learning. Before, there was a poem that everyone in the world knew. Now there is a poem encouraging learning. Could it be that the poetry of our Great Fang's Confucian circle is about to be revived? This poem encouraging learning must be widely spread to admonish those who read books. Why isn't it signed? Which Confucian scholar composed it? Li Mubai, on the side, perked up his ears to listen, then immediately teleported to the board where the poem was hung. The old man now wore a sly grin, wanting to leech off the poem's fame. When the other 2 old men saw this despicable trick, fire shot to their heads, telling the old man to put down the brush quickly. At the same time, in the dean's room, he was sitting opposite 2 people. The 2 seemed like they hadn't met in a long time. The eldest princess's voice asked, "We haven't met in half a year, and the dean's hair has turned much whiter." The old man, the dean of the academy named Zhao Shou, replied, "It's all white hair from sorrow and worry." The eldest princess, named Huaiqing, had heard the disciples here reciting a poem on her way up the mountain today. Don't worry about having no friends on the road ahead, for who in the world does not know you? She also liked this poem very much and asked which great scholar wrote it. This eldest princess was not like other women. She had learned to play Go with Wei Yuan, studied military strategy with Zhang Shun, and learned statecraft with Qin Tai. She knew all the masterpieces of the sage by heart. Her literary essays were in no way inferior to the disciples of the Imperial College. She knew astronomy and was skilled in drilling holes. At the age of 18, she was allowed by the emperor to participate in the compilation work of the Hanlin Academy. The year before, the eldest princess had tried to recompile the history books of the previous dynasty, leading to protests from the court officials, but in the end, she let them be. Returning to the previous question, Zhao Shou calmly replied, Yunlu Academy is full of talent, but it cannot compare to the works written on a whim by others. The thinking of this entire Great Feng Confucian circle has become paralyzed, antiquated, and underfunded. The dean's words confused Huaiqing. Zhao Shou said that in truth, the person who wrote this poem was not a scholar. He is a minor official in Chang'o County. Huaiqing then probed further, asking why Zhao Shou didn't consider becoming an official. The The Confucian path is oriented towards people, so their lifespan is not long. She didn't want the dean to waste any more time. In fact, the official position of the Qingzhou Communications Office was offered to Dean Zhao Shou. But Zhao Shou refused to take the post, so in the end, Yang Gong went instead. Zhao Shou lamented that if wasting time could open a new path of learning for future generations, why wouldn't he dare to do so? Unfortunately, after more than 10 years of enlightenment in the bamboo forest and so much effort, he still couldn't cross the heavenly chasm drawn by the Cheng clan subsage. Huaiqing still advised him to let go of this obsession. She hinted that her imperial father inviting him to become an official was with the intention of reusing Yunlu Academy. If he was truly thinking of Yunlu Academy, he shouldn't refuse. But Zhao Shou had seen through the emperor's intentions. It wasn't that, but rather that he was increasingly unable to control Wei Yuan, or that the schemes of the Zhouzi nobles were becoming sharper. Huaiqing became a little agitated, saying it was for the people of Great Feng, for the common folk of the world, but Zhao Shou maintained a cold, somewhat self-mocking attitude. After the Shanhai Pass campaign, the national strength of Great Feng had been weakening. Natural disasters were continuous, and the number of freeloaders was countless. The scourge of minor officials became more and more apparent. The officials in the court only knew how to fight for power and profit. The number of people who stood by with their arms crossed and talked idly was countless, while those who contributed to the country and the people could be counted on one's toes. Zhao Shou's spirit was now very unsettled, mixed with helplessness. What Great Feng lacked now was a tailor to sew it back together. 3 years ago, the northern barbarians broke the treaty, invaded the border, and exploited the people. The southern barbarians destroyed communication posts and attacked garrison troops to reclaim lost land. The countries of the western regions turned a blind eye, and the Buddhist sects also used this to threaten, wanting to spread their religion to the Central Plains. Huaiqing wanted to provoke Zhao Shou by saying, as an educated person, shouldn't the dean show his ambition and revive our country's authority? Zhao Shou seemed to age even more at this moment. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but the time was not yet, right? Just then, someone reported that there was trouble. Li Mubai, Zhang Shun, and Chintai had all started fighting. One called the other an uneducated old man, another a shameless old thief. It seemed they were all genuinely angry. Zhao Shou wanted to intervene, and Huaiqing also wanted to follow. So the old man said one sentence. 1 zhang away from us is the Sage's Academy Palace. Both of them immediately disappeared and reappeared at the Academy Palace. Suddenly, 3 clashes erupted outside, blowing the windows open. Huaiqing emerged to see the 3 old men, having lost control, cursing at each other. Li Mubai, you shameless fellow, it was bad enough that you tried to snatch my student that day. But today, you do something so despicable. Has all the sages' learning gone to the dogs? Li Mubai shamelessly said that as a teacher, what's the problem with helping a student polish their poetry? It's clearly an uneducated old man like you who is jealous of his talent. On the other side, Chun Tai couldn't stand it anymore and told that fellow to shut up. Li Mubai then criticized the meddling old man. That guy's surname Zhang, and I have our reasons to be angry, but what the hell does it have to do with you? At this moment, Zhang Shen secretly played a dirty trick. He tore a piece of paper like a magical artifact, and when he burned it, it transformed into a swarm of bright green insects. Li Mubai, unperturbed, also took out a similar item and burned it. Immediately, a creature resembling a gecko appeared and spat a large ball of fire from its mouth. Before the surprise ended, Li Mubai materialized a demoness. She approached Zhang Shun, and with just a glance, made Zhang Shun's eyes go dull before he fainted. The situation now had a third party, Chintai. He also used an item, materializing a gleaming golden elixir. It activated a bright mode, forcing people to cover their eyes. The students below were also pierced through the heart by the Sun of Truth. Huaiqing, however, remained calm and recognized it as the 6th-rank scholar realm, which could learn the lost knowledge of other systems, change its writing style, and incorporate it into books. Zhang Shan was using the techniques of a Gu master. The girl on paper from Li Mubai was from the sorcerer system. And as for Chun Tai, he was deploying a Taoist golden core. At this moment, hundreds of curious eyes were following the 3 gods slapping each other. Zhang Shun reached his peak anger and went straight for pulling down old Li Mubai's pants. With his little bird exposed, the old man was pissed as hell, pointed directly at the Fkurs and declared, "Everyone gets their pants pulled down." Immediately, the meddling onlookers also competed in showing off their little birds. Huaiqing was protected and thus unaffected, but her eyes were deeply scarred. Just then, Zhao Shou's voice boomed. "Fighting among fellow disciples is strictly forbidden here. Flying is forbidden. Get down here for me." Immediately, the magical power of the 3 old geezers vanished, and they all fell limply. After seeing it was the dean, the 3 of them froze stiff. Zhao Shou very majestically questioned what had happened. Instantly, Li Mubai and Zhang Shun gave shifty-eyed, perfunctory answers, wanting to get it over with, but Chun Tai tattled on them. Zhao Shou then looked towards the poetry board and understood a little. It was about fame leeching. But wait, Zhao Shou thought again about the guilty looks on the two old men's faces and became suspicious. At this time, Huaiqing also looked at the poem and asked in amazement who composed it. Immediately, the two old men, Li Mubai and Zhang Shun, fought to claim it was their disciple, Su Qian. The whole poem at Mianyang Pavilion to send off Yang Qian to Qingzhou was also by him. Hearing the name Su Qian, Huaiqing found it familiar and thought to herself, for such a great talent, to be a mere bailiff was too much of a waste of capitalist resources. Even if he only knew how to write poetry, she could make him an assistant in her residence. She then asked where he was. Shintai replied that they were now out sightseeing. The two brothers were now passing by the statue of a second-rank great scholar named Qianzhong. According to the records on the stele, this person was born 600 years ago and was active during the early period of the Great Fang's founding. At that time, the old king was incompetent and the officials were corrupt and depraved. The powerful oppressed the common people, wars raged throughout the Central Plains, and rebel armies rose up. At that time, the court of the Great Zhou had been struggling with the rebel armies for over 10 years. The common people living in the lowest strata suffered greatly. Qianzhong, a second-rank great scholar, traveled for 3 years and witnessed the miserable scenes of the people, which filled his heart with indignation. He brought the people's grievances to the capital of Great Zhou, and with his own flesh and blood, he shattered the meager national destiny of the Great Zhou. After that, he established the state of Great Feng, quelled the chaos of war, and brought peace and prosperity to the four corners of the land. Qian fell into deep thought again. Using the people's grievances to shatter the national destiny, even at the end of a dynasty when its luck was weak, was still an incredible feat. He then turned to ask his younger brother about the prowess of a second-rank great scholar over the three old men. Why did he only see them as useless? Xinyan was very contemptuous of his big brother's idiotic question. They're only at the fourth-rank gentleman realm. And great scholar has two meanings. The first refers to scholars with profound knowledge and fame. The other specifically refers to the high-rank realm of the Confucian path. For the past 200 years, Yunlu Academy has at most only produced a third-rank life-bestowing realm, and Din Zhaoshou is precisely a third-rank life-bestowing realm. Qian again judged the three old men as seeming a bit exaggerated and not dignified, lacking a bit of maturity, or in other words, being greenhorns. Xinyan immediately defended them, saying they weren't like this before. This was the past of a villain. After the gentleman realm is the third-rank life-bestowing realm. It was because of the third-rank life-bestowing realm that the old men's personalities changed, as if they had become different people. Some are even just one step away from the life-bestowing realm. People say one misstep leads to misfortune, but for these old men, being one step behind turned them into villains. On the way, Xinyan began to pour out his heart. He had thought a lot yesterday. If it weren't for his brother, his father would have been beheaded, and the female relatives would have been sent to the court of imperial entertainments. And if it weren't for Qian, Ling Wen and Ling Yin would have been in danger yesterday, very likely bullied by that man, surnamed Zhou. The Su family might have remained immersed in the luck of surviving a disaster for the rest of their lives, and then one day, they would just vanish. He sincerely thanked his brother. After that, they went to the Sub-Sage's Academy Palace. Xinyan pointed to the white deer, which was the origin of Yunlu Academy's name. Qian thought it was a mount, but unexpectedly received a shocking answer. It was the sub-sage's wife. The Yunlu records state that this white deer was a demon. After the sage sat down, it sat beside him, listening to the classics. Later, it transformed into a human and stayed by the sub-sage side. A human and a demon lived together since childhood. Their feelings deepened, and they became husband and wife. At that time, the mortal world did not allow humans and demons to be together, and it's the same now. But after the sage learned of the matter, he did not break up the couple. On the contrary, he approved of their marriage. From that story, one could see that as long as there is love, humans and demons can be together forever. Love is limitless, but for a small-dicked guy, it's 30 centimeters. Qian's mind went wild again, thinking that since ancient times, love stories between humans and demons have had nicknames. For example, the union of heaven and man. So, this sub-sage's nickname must be calling a deer a horse, as in he rode the deer. Truly, Qian was floored. He was then attracted by the stele next to it. It was left here by the sub-sage of the Imperial College. This story must be told from the struggle for the nation's foundation 200 years ago. The Crown Prince is the root of the country. At that time, Emperor Renzong was in power. The position of Crown Prince had been vacant for more than 10 years. Of the two princes competing for the throne, one was the legitimate eldest son, and the other was the son of a concubine. But Emperor Renzong decided to make the son of the concubine the Crown Prince. This was vehemently opposed by the entire civil and military court. The age-old rule was to establish the elder, not the younger. Establish the legitimate, not the secondary. Even the emperor could not violate this. Xinyan had to admit that his big brother's words, though unreasonable, were very persuasive. Rights were the mandatory regulations that scholars often used. Emperor Renzong issued edicts many times, but they were all rejected by the cabinet, and the person leading the entire civil and military court at that time was a scholar from Yunlu Academy. This struggle for the nation's foundation dragged on for 2 Gold Cup seasons. During that time, the Grand Secretary of the cabinet was replaced 4 times, and court officials successively left. At this time, a scholar from Yunlu Academy took over the position of Grand Secretary and still resolutely dedicated himself to Emperor Renzong. He endured all the curses to resolve this matter. Finally, the turbulent struggle for the nation's foundation came to an end, and Yunlu Academy was thus detested by Emperor Renzong. Emperor Renzong at that time realized that the existence of Yunlu Academy was not conducive to imperial rule. At this time, Cheng Hui proposed the construction of the Imperial College for the court to cultivate its own talent. The Confucian school also began to weaken from then on. This is the origin of the dispute between the Imperial College and the Orthodox Confucian school. According to Qian's modern interpretation, the Imperial College is a public university while Yunlu Academy is private. Obviously, how can a private one fight against a public one? After explaining the story, Xinyan wanted to see what Qian's thoughts were, completely unrelated to academics. He felt that his brother was a bailiff and wouldn't be able to answer if it involved academics. Qian, being treated like trash, tried to prove his 5 million tael worth that on the surface, it was a struggle for the nation's foundation, but in reality, it was a power struggle. If scholars want to realize their ambitions, they must hold power in their hands, and the power of a nation is fixed. When you hold power in your hands, you will have the power to make others disappear. The highest realm in a power struggle is to make the emperor lose his real power, turning him into a useless emperor. Xinyan was shocked by his big brother's eloquent explanation. Qian asked doubtfully, "Am I wrong?" Outwardly, Xinyan said, "Big brother, please continue." But in his heart, he was terrified of his brother. That's very correct. But these words cannot be spoken carelessly. Qian continued, "No matter how formidable the Confucian school is, in the end, imperial power is still stronger. Manipulating political power is only a temporary matter. In the end, the body will be in one place and the soul in another. Because a subordinate is forever just a subordinate." Xinyan emotionally asked for a solution. Qian answered bluntly, "There is none. The court is like a battlefield. The struggle for power is only joyful for a moment. Later, it will be the death of the entire family. However, I have another way. The story of the great scholar Qian is the clearest example. When a person can influence the destiny of a country, they can then stand on equal footing with imperial power, becoming a powerhouse on par with that emperor fellow." At this moment, Xinyan was enlightened by Qian's words. He never expected that while he was testing someone, he would be tested in return. That fellow thought again. Although Yunlu Academy no longer produces officials, it still holds the sacred ground of cultivation for the Confucian school. As for the Confucian system beginning